Okay, so the ending of episode 5 season 3 of The Mandalorian raises a whole lot of questions. What transpired between Bo Katan and the Armourer in particular can be a little confusing and certainly isn't all that straightforward. But if you look a little closer, these moments seem to hint that the Armourer is concocting an elaborate scheme. A scheme that promises to transform the future of Mandalorian politics and power, a scheme that, if successful, places the Armourer right on top of the Mandalorian hierarchy. So let's start with what we know first. Following the defeat of Pirate King Gorian Shard, the Mandalorians, or specifically the Children of the Watch, are granted a sizable piece of land to live on, effectively ensuring that for once since the fall of Mandalore, the Mandalorians have a safe haven to live on, where they wouldn't have to skulk in the shadows or disguise themselves from any unwanted attention. And this new momentous change in the fate of the Mandalorians seemed to have a profound effect, especially when it comes to the confidence of the Armourer, who has now openly declared that it is time to retake Mandalore.
It is time to retake Mandalore.
But if we go back to where the Armourer asked to see Bo Katan, we get a moment where Bo Katan is asked to remove her helmet, which can be pretty confusing. Now, the reason for why the Armourer asked Bo to remove her helmet seems to be explained later on, when the Armourer explains that Bo will be the one to unite all Mandalorians. Given that Bo has walked the path of the old ways, she now has the experience to unite the Mandalorians who don't and the Mandalorians who do, specifically to bring all the tribes together, and this seems to be an explanation that everyone readily accepts. And I think that there is some merit in that reasoning. By being able to remove her helmet, Bo is more than likely able to appeal to the less extreme Mandalorians, bridging the gap between the two and allowing for Mandalorians to unite once again. But if you really think about it, the explanation given as to why Bo was granted permission to remove her helmet far from covers the other more important question. Instead of asking why Bo Katan should remove her helmet, we really should be asking why the Armourer suddenly has a change of heart. Specifically, why is she now okay with members of her tribe removing their helmet? Throughout Season 1 and Season 2, it has been reiterated time and time again that for the Children of the Watch, the removal of their helmet is a sacrilegious act. For when a Mandalorian removes their helmet, they are Mandalorian no more. This was most abundantly clear when Mando reunited with the Armourer in the Book of Boba Fett, and why it was so important to Din that he redeem himself in the living waters of Mandalore. So if you think about it from this perspective, the Armourer deciding to give Bo permission to remove her helmet seems to be in violation of everything we know about the Children of the Watch, a decision that goes against the very core tenets of the old ways. So really, this U-turn away from religious extremism to pragmatic moderation seems rather baffling, especially if you take the Armorer's explanation at face value. Which is why I think the Armorer's decision needs to be closely examined, and it most certainly hints towards a bigger scheme at play. Recall that when the Armourer asked Bo to take off her helmet, Bo is initially hesitant. That is, until the Armourer says,
Do you respect my station?
I do.
Remove your helmet.
What this is effectively a power play, the Armourer leveraging her position as the elder of the tribe and the faith of its followers effectively force Bo Katan to remove her helmet, thereby committing sacrilege. She is using her position of power to enforce her will over others, and this, in fact, might be the first time we see her explicitly doing so. More often than not, the Armourer has mainly acted as a guide, a wise sage for Mandalorians to consult. She mostly stands by the sidelines and allows things to play out, only stepping in to remind others of the old ways. We knew that she was an influential figure and the de facto leader of the Children of the Watch, but this moment here with Bo is her actually flexing real power. But this moment is a whole lot more than that, as she then goes on to tell Bo that Mandalorians as a whole have strayed from the old ways, that far too many Mandalorians have forgotten the old ways, and that the few who walk it are not enough. Which actually directly contradicts her decision to tell Bo to remove her helmet. The two seems to be contradictions irreconcilable with each other. And while this seems questionable at first, this moment might actually be a true reflection of who the Armourer is, that being someone who is religiously pragmatic, that while the Armourer is devout to her religion and the old ways, she is also someone who is willing to compromise her faith if it means furthering her religion. To give you an example, you can think of the Armourer as the head of her religion, the Pope, if you will. And much like the popes of the 16th century, they were more than happy to indulge in activities that went against their core values and tenets, if it meant growing their power and the power of the church. So in some ways, the Armourer mirrors just that, demonstrating a willingness to momentarily deviate from her faith if it means strengthening the overall religion. And once you accept this possibility, it actually changes your whole perception of all the significant events concerning the Mandalorians in this and the previous seasons as well. What the Armourer has effectively done is shore up and consolidated her power and influence. Let me explain. Now keep in mind that there are two objects in the Mandalorian mythos that can legitimize someone to be the ruler of Mandalore. The first object is the dark saber, promising that only the wielder of the blade deserves to rule Mandalore. The second part of the mythos, and a far older one, is the mythosaur, foretelling that the return of the mythosaur will herald a new age, potentially legitimizing whoever tames the mythosaur as the rightful Mandalore. But what's really insane about all this is that the Armourer has both in the palm of her hand. The dark saber is already within her possession by extension through Din Djarin. Given that he rightfully won it through combat, the legitimizing symbol of the dark saber is already within her control. And more recently, with Bo Katan admitting that she saw the mythosaur, possibly being the first Mandalorian to do so for thousands of years, now also within her control. The Armourer has effectively all she needs to be the de facto leader of the Mandalorians. Not to mention, given that both Din and Bo look up to the Armourer for wisdom and guidance, being somewhat subservient to her command, it places an insane amount of power within the hands of the Armourer. And while the Armourer may not be openly declared as Mandalore, you can be sure as hell she is the de facto leader of the Mandalorians. Which is why drawing parallels between the Armourer and a 16th century Pope is so perfect. Much like the popes, the Armourer doesn't need to be declared as king or Mandalore. Her religious authority ensures that she already supersedes it, ensuring that the Armourer is the real leader, not the rider of the mythosaur or the wielder of the dark saber. And once you acknowledge this possibility, her decision to send Bo out to find more Mandalorians and to bring them back onto the right path makes a whole lot of sense. What it is really a religious leader asking their subjects to bring them more followers, to convert more Mandalorians to their cause and back to the old ways. And this directive is pretty much the equivalent of the 16th century popes demanding Catholic kings to aid in whatever religious quest they deem important. Because like any religious organization, it can never say no to more followers. And what's crazy about this is that it really doesn't matter who is in control of the dark saber or the mythosaur. So long as the Armourer has control over their respective owners, she is basically untouchable. And if she successfully leads the Mandalorian people back to Mandalore, it will fully cement her position as the ultimate religious authority, legitimizing the old way as the one and only interpretation of the Mandalorian faith. It really is a clever scheme that the Armourer has thus far successfully taken advantage of. With both Mando and Bo within her control, there is really nothing stopping her from being the de facto leader. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.